me okay?
I can hear you fantastically. With winning screenwriter Melissa Birks, Mrs. O'Leary is the screenplay. It's based on the Chicago fire of 1871, the Great Chicago Fire. I don't know how why infamous. I guess it's more of an infamous Chicago fire, and it's about the Catherine O'Leary who is unjustly accused of starting the fire. Right?
That's right. That's right. The story.
Thematically, what's this screenplay about? I know I just gave you the plot, but what are you trying to say with the screenplay?
I think thematically, what I'm trying to say is I use the word Victorian era cancel culture. I try to sort of link what happened to Mrs. O'Leary in 1871 to a culture today where we could see where people justly or unjustly through their own agency or through other agencies are kind of thrust into a position where they are either blamed for something or they are under some kind of scrutiny for something. And so this is what happened to Catherine O'Leary. It started as it wasn't the fire did start in her barn, and it blew up, pun intended. It blew up and it,
Mhm.
destroyed the city of Chicago, and her life was forever, uh, you could say, destroyed. And so I think that thematically, what I want to try to show is, look, is our world so very different? And the media was a big part of what happened to Catherine O'Leary. Chicago at the time was a huge newspaper town. I don't even know how many newspapers there were. But that's one thing I'm interested. I used to be a reporter back in the day. And so things like how they seized on this, oh my gosh, a woman was milking in her barn at 8 p.m. at night and a cow kicked her. And it was just it was a story. It was a great story. And how different is that? They didn't have the social media obviously that we know of, but they made up things, they made pictures, they drew pictures that were completely fictional. They there's one little poem about her that was silly. And so how different is it from the trolling that we see
Yeah.
in today's world, right? And so I just found that really fascinating.
It is fascinating where like how we as humans we really haven't evolved that much emotionally,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. How different, how right, how different are we? Sits in front of a government commission, any kind of, you can think about that, any kind of government investigation, and they're, throwing the questions at her, and it isn't different. We want, I can blame someone. I have a human being, a one woman, an illiterate, and Irish immigrant. She was very industrious. My screenplay talks about, they rented, she and her husband owned their house. They had owned it since like 1864. She ran a milkmaid delivery service,
Yeah.
whatever you had. She was a businesswoman. She was not some no good nothing, whatever the stereotypes are of immigrants. She and her family were industrious, great members of the community for all we know, for what we know. But you have an event that I think even probably today, how can people wrap their arms around this? How can people wrap their arms around at 9 p.m. on a Sunday night, a fire? It starts in a little barn and it ends up wreaking this horrific destruction. And so I think there is, to your point, which is a great, there is this human tendency. You've got to find a reason. You've got to
We
grip
always want to
onto
blame,
something.
right?
You want to blame, and you want to get, and I'm not going to go into necessarily conspiracy theories, but there is um then today I want to find out uh who I can blame, what the cause, and no way that can you be blamed for that. Well, sure, you want to find out what caused, because you don't want the fire to happen again. So
Yeah.
you don't want that to happen again. So okay, so you gotta kind of um I think marry to some extent those instincts that we have.
No, it's just that we like it because usually when something bad happens, it's never one thing. It's usually a combination
Absolutely, it's like
of
absolutely,
things,
absolutely.
right?
You're absolutely right. And in the book that I was inspired by, and I have kind of befriended very nicely the author of it, a historian in Aurora here in Illinois, The Great Chicago Fire and the Myth of Mrs. O'Leary's Cow. I kind of started that book, and it's a amazingly researched book, but what he does is exactly that. He gets really into all of these factors, and he talks about, as Richard Bales is the author's name. He talks about there were so many things going on that Sunday. There was wind. The fire department, there had been a fire the night before. The fire department was tired. Their resources were strapped. All sorts of, this toxic storm. Um, and it wasn't just a woman in her shed milking a cow.
Yeah.
All kinds of things going on.
So also, okay, so 1871, woman couldn't even vote. It would be
Could see.
59 years. Isn't that
Great.
amazing?
Yeah, great
Before
thing.
they can
Yeah,
vote, or
great
40,
perspective.
49 years. So basically 1920, right? So
Hmm. Yeah.
49 years. And then obviously, like, I don't know if people know this, but Irish were considered like third class citizens. There was if your
Oh,
name
yeah,
was
yeah.
O'Leary, it was good. It was easy to be a villain, I guess.
Yeah, very easy villain. Very
Yeah.
easy villain. What agency do you have? And as I just said, she and her family were stalwart for what we know, members of the community, but they're Irish immigrants, and the Irish would ascend to power levels in the city in time. I think at that point,
Eventually, yeah, but
yeah, right,
this is late the 1800s, right? Like
right, absolutely,
the
18th, yeah.
Irish were considered like less than, let's just put it that
Yeah,
way. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Very easy target. And again, how different is it today?
Well, the Irish and Italians and Jews have been, well, maybe not the Jews, but they've been replaced by different immigrants, I guess, right?
I think you could argue that. I think you could argue
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I try to make and I'm glad you asked that question because it would be so easy for well, it's happened in 1871 and it happened in Chicago. It's regional, it's period, both of which are true, but my hope is that we can see that it does, that the narrative transcends that regionalism and that period.
Gotcha. All right. So your mom, according to the blog interview, you're talking to your mom on the phone, right?
Yes, absolutely true.
Okay. So tell the story.
So she on the phone. I don't know if anyone else's mom is like this,
Yeah.
but my mom, she is a reader. She was an educator in reading, a reading educator all of her professional life. And so she reads. And so it's not enough for her to read. She wants to read to you. So I'm on the phone with her. She's in West Michigan. I'm in Illinois. Now I got this book. I think it was called Bad Days in, it might just be that, Bad Days in History. And I just want to read you something. And I'm on the phone. I'm like, okay. That's my mom. But I know this drill, right? And she literally ran she's just random. Oh, here's the day, October 8th, 1871. And she starts to read me and these are just, it looks like actually a great book. They're just split. They're just tiny, on this day, Mrs. O'Leary, and I kid you not, and I'm sure other creatives can identify with this. I just was like, wow, that's a great story. Because of course the angle of that little blurb was that we know today that blaming her was unfair. We know that she's been
Sure.
exonerated. She was exonerated years ago by the city council. So it wasn't like, oh, Mrs. O'Leary was the villain. I mean, the blurb was very much like this poor woman, and that's how I seized on that. Oh wow, yeah, God, that would suck. And that's literally always listen to your mother when she reads you something.
Okay. So your mom kind of tells you this bad day in history book, Mrs. O'Leary, and then it pops in your
Well, all
brain.
these dates, in history, it was total random. She just
No,
picked it
but
out
I'm
of the
saying, but
book.
the context of this, like, so the Mrs.
Yeah,
O'Leary story or story kind of popped in your brain, and then what was the
yeah.
next step? What did you do?
Well, the research. I mean, actually the next step was I'm Googling I'm on Amazon and I get Richard Bale's book off of
Okay.
Amazon. And I'm gonna say, I'll tell you it again, the great it's in my drawer, the Great Chicago Fire and the Myth of Mrs. O'Leary's Cow. And I'm researching that and I get his book and I'm looking, who is this gentleman? And turns out he's in Aurora, which a little bit downstate Illinois. And I email him, you don't know me. I read your book, which is a fantastic, I'm not just for the research, but it's just beautifully written. And hey, can I really want to make Mrs. O'Leary a movie. I think it's a movie, and I think her story needs to be told. And we met. He took a train up into Chicago, and as I said, he's been I use that word partner. He's been an enthusiastic supporter
Mhm.
of the project. I will tell you that my Mrs. O'Leary, my project is historical fiction. So I don't want to give away the store, but it is not a documentary.
Yeah.
It is a story. It's a narrative. And but what Mr. Bales revealed or his theory, I guess, in that book was kind of the inspiration that I took about the culprit of the fire, the true culprit.
I want to give a couple things away. So the night was 1997. So over 100 years later, she was like fully exonerated by the Chicago City Council, right?
And her cow. And her cow. That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. That's
And
right.
then and then so basically she and then so but then like the way you like because there's different ways to dive into this story. So who are the I guess the antagonistic characters in the film? So she's the
Right.
main character, right? Who is like is it the courts, the city, the newspapers?
I think I would say so she's our protagonist. I would say the antagonist would be a gentleman named Chadwick, who was the lead sort of investigator. There was a board of police and fire commissioners, and he's on the police, and they are the ones who are getting all kinds of pressure. Investigate this fire. What happened from the media, from citizens, investigate this fire. That's your
Yeah.
job. Find out what happened. How did the fire department act? How did they act? What was their behavior? What's the deal with this woman in the shed? Come on, man. And so they're feeling this heat. All right, we're going to investigate. So about a month, well, November, they finally start investigating. And so he becomes, in my telling, the sort of villain of the story. He's the one who seizes on Mrs. O'Leary is an easy target, and he kind of runs this investigation. Uh, and it turns out, and this is true, the report, which comes out in December of that year, is inconclusive after all that.
Yeah.
Now, for years, does anyone remember that the report was, it doesn't say Mrs. O'Leary, it's inconclusive. It doesn't blame her. But for how many decades or whatever afterwards, that's who started the fire, right? So, and I'll go back to Dick Bale's book, very expertly talks about the flaws in that investigation. So anyway, so yes, I make Chadwick the sort of the villain. Mrs. O'Leary is your protagonist. Her husband, then there are two very important men in her life. One is her husband, Patrick, uh, solid guy, family guy, sees what's happening to his wife, is supportive, but kind of begs her, let's just kind of lay low.
Yeah.
Let's not antagonize. She's like, I want to clear my name. And the other important figure is their neighbor, Peg Leg, so named because he has a wooden leg, Peg Leg Sullivan. He is
Peg Leg Sullivan.
Peg Leg Sullivan. Very important.
That's a
Very
good.
important.
So then you kind of tipped your hat and said that she didn't get exonerated until she passed away. So this
Yeah,
is
I
not
mean,
in her lifetime, this is not a happy story.
oh, absolutely not. No, no. In her lifetime, she lived for about 24 years
Yeah.
after the fire. The never really talked about it publicly. There are all kinds of drawings. It's interesting. There are all kinds of images that reporters at the time and artists just made of her, just Oh, Mrs. O'Leary, funny pictures of her in a barn with
Yeah, that's
cats
what they
and
did in
cat.
newspapers back in the day.
Oh,
They
I totally did that.
caricatured, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Right. Yeah, loved it. And had a great time. She wouldn't pose for pictures or there are pictures of their house, by the way. Um, People all over the house. But yeah, no, she was not happy. She kind of she lived for 24 years. She in her lifetime never shook it off. And one of the again, as a former newspaper person, I'm a huge fan of I love looking at old newspapers because I find them the way they're written very interesting. The voices are very interesting, and I have this in the end of my script. She dies on July, I think, 3rd of 1895, and the Tribune at the time, the Chicago Daily, whatever it was, its headline is she gets a front page obituary 24 years later. Mrs. O'Leary is dead, noted principally for her cow.
Yeah.
That's her obit. And I always think to myself, wow, what, if I die, what kind of headline? Noted for her
Yeah.
cow.
But
So yes.
she's almost like an artist, like when you're an
Yeah.
artist and you don't get noticed until afterwards,
Yeah,
after you
until you
pass away.
and but what do you but even then, what do you get? You get, yeah, at the time,
Yeah.
she's still the woman who started the fire.
Yeah.
It would take decades for that to shake off.
Did you
So
watch the movie in Old Chicago?
I
Okay.
did. And I love that you mentioned that because I'm sitting there watching it. And so, for those of you who don't know, it's 38 or 39, very expensive movie. I think at the time, hugely expensive. The fire comes, for those who don't know, it's really the story of Mrs. O'Leary's sons, grown up sons.
Yeah, it's a musical too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. But what the fire comes in Act Three, the fire is late in the game in Act Three, and you see if you're watching, because I'm sitting there, I'm doing my research, I'm still writing it,
Yeah.
and there's this silhouetted figure, and he's limping, and he's running across the screen, and he's yelling, "Fire, fire!" And it's Pegleg. It is not credited. It's not. It's literally, shh,
Yeah.
and he's limping, and so the maker, the writer, of that film knew Peg Leg's and researched whatever Peg Leg's role, at least what was known at that time. He was the one who called the fire. He called the
Yeah.
fire.
So Alice Brady stars in it, and she won an
And
Oscar for
she
that.
won an
Like
Oscar.
back, yeah.
Yeah,
And then she
supporting
died like
actress.
right afterwards, or right
Did
after.
she really? Is that right? Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, she died
yeah.
right after the film.
And they make their little tagline is, I think if I remember right, it's been a couple months, well, several months, but
Yeah.
you can't keep those O'Learys down or something like that. It's
Yeah.
very, it's kind of,
So my main Godfrey is like one of the classic 30s films. She starred in that film as well. So she had a pretty
okay.
good career.
She was
I'm like
pretty, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm like diving into 1930 cinema.
Yeah, no, no. I had no. I had. Did you know that film before you started in
Yeah,
this?
well, I've heard of it before, right? Like I could admit it that I've seen a lot of 1930s movies. I have not seen this movie. I tried to find
Yeah,
it. I couldn't find it anywhere.
I found it. I must have found it on Prime or something. I don't know. But watch for that again. If you don't have any kind of backstory, you're just like, oh, there's a dude running across and he's kind of limping. Why is he limping? Well, he's got a wooden leg, and he's the one who's alerting the fire, and it would just kind of pass you by. But as yeah, so I'm like, oh my God, that's Peg Leg.
Yeah. Because like back in the 30s, it was like during the Depression, so like it was a lot of kind of joyous kind of films they tried like
Yeah, yeah.
it was also a lot of poor people trying to like not be poor.
Right, right. And again, and they come through that film, and I remember that, that kind of ending, I think is literally like, Mary, you can't keep us down. And so it is a very, we've got this adversity and we're gonna
Yeah.
we're gonna make it,
And then there's
which
the
is
PBS documentary. Did you watch the PBS documentary about the Chicago fire?
I've seen several on BEZ. I don't know if that's also on PBS.
Okay.
WBBZ is a Chicago. I'm sorry, is a Chicago, yeah. I think a PBS affiliate, and so they've done
Yeah.
several. I don't know if I've seen
The
the whole
like
PBS.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and there is, and actually, WBEZ has several kind of fire. They have a whole series, of course, about the fire, but one of them is about Mrs. O'Leary and interviews a distant, not a relative of Nancy Connolly, who I've met, who's a descendant of the
I like
O'Learys.
how you said the tie to back to what you said at the beginning, because it is about like kind of like cancel culture in a sense where we like blame quickly, right?
Blame
And it's
quickly,
like, and if
blame, ask
someone makes
questions
a
later.
mistake, you know what I mean? They're ostracized for the rest of their life, right?
Right. Because
Yeah.
who comes back? Certainly in that day, in the heat of the fire, no
Yeah.
one was media wise. No one was kind of holding back and saying, "Wait a minute, what? Let's kind of look at this, more."
But also the name, right? The name O'Leary, it gets, kind of infamous in the culture, right?
Oh, I think it. I mean, here it is. Sure. I mean, you say that word. I mean, at least regionally. I don't know where you're from. But
But you're from
um,
Chicago, right?
I'm no, I'm not. I'm from
Okay.
West Michigan. I'm from Grand Rapids, Michigan. But and I can't remember if I put this in our question and
Yeah.
answer. But so I'm in West Michigan. Grand Rapids, Michigan is about 3 hours away from Chicago,
Yeah.
West Michigan. When I was a Girl Scout in the early 1970s, that dates me. Um, we learned one dark night when we were all in bed, Mrs. O'Leary put the lantern in the shed. There's literally a song,
Yeah.
and I've since traced it from 1890s, I think 1896, about it's called Hot Time in the Old Town Tonight. And so I grew up, and I think a lot of people very regional grew up singing that song. And the big line in that song is she winked her eye, Mrs. O'Leary winks her eye and said, "There'll be a hot time in the old town tonight." She starts a fire and she
Yeah.
winks her eye.
It's amazing. It's sort of like you've heard of Bartman, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Oh my
Yeah.
God. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
sort of like if your name's Bartman,
If your name's Bartman, man. Yeah. By
you're
the way,
done in Chicago.
there's a great documentary about that case. I don't know if you've seen that, and I don't remember where it is anymore. It was a
It's like
couple years ago.
it's one of those ESPN 30 for 30 things.
Yes, I
But
think that's right. I
people
think you're
don't
right.
know he's the one who was
Caught the
just going
ball.
after a foul ball, right, in Chicago in
Yep.
2003.
Yep.
And
That's
then
right.
it ended this rally against my Florida Marlins, and they
Yep.
ended up losing the game and they're not going to the World Series. But they won 13 years later, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Right. But
yeah.
no, that's a great parallel. I'm glad you
Yeah, it
mentioned
is
that.
because it's like the name gets you're
He
destroyed, right?
he was destroyed. And what I love about that documentary, and again, it's been years since I saw it, and it's just a very quickly at the end, they try to get the producers track him down. I think it's in a parking garage, and that guy would not talk.
He's still not talking. It's
He is
amazing.
he is not talking, and
He
you
can
got
make
to
so
look at
much
him.
money too, right? Like basically
He
doing a
could be
book, doing interviews.
set
Yeah,
for life, set
yeah.
for life, and he would not, and neither would Mrs. O'Leary. Hundreds of years before. But I kind of look at that and like, wow, that's grit, man.
That no, it's so fascinating to me, like how in this capitalistic American world, like he just like they don't take the money.
Didn't he could have been as yeah, absolutely could have been set for life, but he
Yeah.
was just no, I don't. And I never know. I've heard, and I don't know if this is true, and I haven't gone down the rabbit hole. There was times when people had said that Bartman had literally changed his name. I don't know if that's
Sure,
if
I'm sure he did. Yeah.
yeah, it could, yeah, yeah. But
And he didn't do anything. He just went after a foul ball
he
like
just
everybody
went
else did.
after, like millions of other fans would do.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's crazy.
yeah,
Life is crazy. It's a
yeah. I'm
great story.
glad.
There's a lot of themes in there. That's why, like, so I think that you're on to something. It's really well written.
Thank
So,
you. And I will. I'm going to give you guys a shout out. The feedback I got uh made actionable. I always use that word. So the feedback you get when you're writing, the more specific it is, and the more you can't think about this to do X to solve X problem was just spot on. Was so helpful and made a huge difference, I think.
that's so good to hear.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
let's talk again. Or let's talk again if hopefully this gets progressed and or
I
when you
hope
do your
so.
next award winning script, but fantastic script and I wish you the best with
Thank
it.
you. Thank you. Thank you for your time. You've been great.